What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Main Stand. What are we on, episode, Pat? Episode 2. Season 2, episode 2. Yes. So we're here with Taylor Mannix, host of the Mannix Brothers, on the Big Jab, correct?
Yeah, Middays with Mannix and Mannix every Monday through Friday, 10 to 2.
Perfect. And we're here to chat some football today. We know you have a segment called the Football Focus. You're a Revs fan. You're an Everton fan. You're a soccer coach. So we're here to start right from the bottom and kind of go through the whole story and hopefully chop it up about some pro soccer right now as well.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, so first things first, we'll start off right at kind of the beginning of the backstory here. How'd you really get into soccer and stuff? Because you grew up in Portland, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, I attended Portland High School and grew up playing in the PESA soccer ranks there and worked my way up to Portland High. Ended up transferring and playing up at Halldale as well in Class C for a year, but then ended up back at Portland and finished off there. Lost in the state title to Bangor 2011 as a starting goalie. That was tough. Shout out to Phil Frost for the only kid to ever score a hat trick on me at the varsity. And did it in the biggest game ever, so congrats to him. It was fun, so it kind of started there. And then, of course, I was in the Army after and did little stuff like that, intramural things, and always continued to stay within the game. And now I've picked up coaching and am coaching with the Lightning and over at Portland High School now, giving back a little bit to the program that helped build my love for the sport.
Nice.
Oh, yeah. I know all about Halldale. I went to Winthrop through high school. So.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I was there in 2008, 2009. I was playing with like Brandon Gilbert and James McCollum and a couple of those kids who were starting at the time. Not sure if those names ring a bell, but
the rivalry was anything like when I was in school. But they would normally beat us by like 10 goals like every single time. Wow. We were getting JV started against our varsity year over year.
Well, I've always known Winthrop to be basketball and football school. So.
Not soccer, that's for sure, but it was still fun.
Yeah. So, Taylor, how'd you kind of get your interest in pro soccer? Because I know there's a lot of, good soccer players that come up the ranks in Maine and high school and whatnot, but, you don't always see, kids that play soccer really get interested in the pro side. So how did that really come around in terms of interest?
Definitely started with one of my influences to start playing goalkeeper, which is Tim Howard. And, following his career and following him to Everton and watching him as much as I could, whether it be on YouTube as a kid or just trying to find any clip you could. Because back then, obviously, we didn't have Peacock and all this access to the Premier League we do now. So it was a little bit tougher to find those. But, you'd go digging and find that. And then, of course, watching him whenever you could. So I think my real passion for professional soccer started with him, Gigi Buffon, guys like that. Because, again, I'm a big-time goalkeeper guy. So following those guys at a young age and really the Italian, that like World Cup with, the Zidane headbutt and all the drama that was around that. And I think that kind of piqued the interest of like, man, like I really like this game now and at this level and all these names, like who are these guys? Who's Buffon? Like who's Zidane? Like who do they play for? Most of the love for the professional side with Everton started with Tim Howard and just following his career because he was my favorite growing up. So just instantly seeing him and being able to follow his career was really fun and a big spark into the Premier League. And now I'm like every year I'm just like, you know what I mean? I watch it now nonstop. So
now you get to enjoy Tim Howard pretty much every weekend on the NBC Sports Desk. So we love that.
He's not bad either. He's a good analyst. He's always looking dapper. So he's looking good up.
For sure. Before we get into too much Premier League stuff, Pat, I'll let you go ahead and kind of take the charge on some MLS, some Revs stuff, because I know Pat's a big MLS guy.
Yeah. So we've got two Revolution fans, one honorary Revolution fan now, in Josh, on the podcast here. It's been a bumpy last couple of years, going from kind of bad to Bruce Arena taking over, best team in MLS regular season history, and now sitting 10th in the East. What do you think has kind of been like the issue this season? Because I know I can point fingers and kind of see my problems, but what about you? What's your perspective on kind of like what's been going wrong, so to speak, with the Revolution this year?
Feel like, I mean, definitely, I think injuries a little bit can't come into play. But more importantly, I just think consistency out of the back. You know, I really think that there hasn't been enough consistency back there. And I mean, when you look at it, they're getting plenty of draws, but there's also a lack, I feel like, of I don't want to say it's finishing, because they have, you know, Dylan Barrero and Gustavo Bo have been exceptional, especially Gustavo Bo. He's really, I think, kind of, to me, surprised me a little bit this year, especially when you lose out of Buxa, you lose Taylor Buchanan, you got to kind of, who's going to fill the void? And I think he's done a really good job at that, but I do still think that, you know, they're missing that it factor that they had with a Buxa and a Tejan still a little bit. And I just, the consistency out of the back for me. I know Henry Kessler, good for him for getting the, you know, the Player of the Week award, and it was an incredible heads-up play he made on the goal line this past weekend that, you know, I think, you know, you can't go overlooked, but I just think there's been a lot of inconsistencies for me back there that have, again, led to some late goals, especially late early on. I don't know how many games they conceded late that we end up sitting here going, oh, no, just coming away with a point instead of 3. So definitely lack of consistency, especially at the end of games, I think has really burnt them.
Do you kind of attribute, just to talk about the issues in front of goal, the kind of like lack of a clinical edge, do you attribute that at all to the fact that, you know, we signed this veteran presence at the front in Josie Altidore, who was kind of meant to replace the goals that Buxa had, and he really hasn't looked like the guy that Toronto had, like, at all?
I think also with Josie, I don't think he's been I hate to say this because, you know, Brad might get at me for, because we always talk to Brad Feldman, might get on me. I just don't think Josie's really fit here. You know what I mean? And I think that he's a great player. He's one of the most talented USA players of all time, like, I think arguably. And he's had a great career, but I just feel like him coming here, I even for that signing for me, like, I didn't really want that type of player. And I just think he hasn't really fit the mold of what they're looking for, and especially when we saw how many minutes he played just this past week because he had to, you know, filling some roles there with injuries. So I do think, unfortunately, that's, to me, maybe a swing and a miss for them as well. Like, it sounds to me like you kind of feel that wasn't a good signing, and I'm with you. I just think you could have gotten younger. I mean, and looking at what's going on with the Revs, you know, development team, they're winning that MLS Next. I think there's a lot to look forward to, and hopefully, at least for me, I would like for them to not take the direction of going back to a Josie type play. I mean, and I love Sebastian Lletget too. I don't think he's been necessarily like as much of an issue as Josie, but yeah, I again love Josie Altidore, but I'm with you. I don't think he's necessarily been the right fit for what they're looking for out of him at that position.
Yeah, I almost think that they would have been better finding a more like out and out replacement for Buchanan leaving, as opposed to looking for someone to fill that striker role. Just like you said, younger, a little bit more of like a dynamic forward, I think feels more like what the Revolution are missing now than they, you know, I love help a little bit more.
Like, I think the Dylan Barrero signing has been fantastic. I love what he brings. I honestly just wonder how long he's going to be in New England for.
Yeah.
I think he's going to go to Europe at this point, the way I've seen him play. Like, he's a guy destined for Europe, the way he plays. So, I mean, I wonder how long you have Barrero. But, I mean, you know, it's an interesting thing to ponder, too, of what they could have done with that money otherwise, you know, instead of putting it to Altidore and where they could be now. With results, especially. But, I mean, I don't know, again, do you attribute the late goals conceded to the offense? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, those late game lapses are just inexcusable, too. I mean, that's a lot of mental stuff, too, and I'm not blaming Bruce Arena for this in no way, shape, or form, but I mean, again, that's on, you know, keeping guys disciplined and making sure everyone's playing the game through and through. That's a mental thing for the whole team.
Yeah, it's tough. It's really tough to point at like one specific thing and say like this is the singular issue. It's been a rocky season, and that it kind of feels like it's been, you know, like I mentioned, you know, earlier at the start of the question, it kind of feels like it's been like the Revolution thing these past couple of years is, you know, have a great season and then have these like really rocky periods and then like bounce back, so to speak, and then have another really good season. I hope that they can turn it around. Do you think they make playoffs this year to kind of close out Revolution chat? You think they sneak into the top 8 or?
Man.
So I think 9th is about as good as we're going to get. I don't see us sneaking in, and if we do, I don't think we're getting out of the first round.
I think that's a really good question, and I'm with you. It's really, unless they start, closing out games and finding ways to win these games late, especially against better competition. Because right now, the way they've performed against the top teams hasn't really made me feel that even if they get into the playoffs, it's going to be a fun experience. I mean, and look, I completely take the New York the NYCFC game with a grain of salt. I mean, you know what I mean? How the poor officiating, just everything in that game sucked. But like how you played against, you know what I mean? That's inexcusable type stuff. So, I'm with you. To me, it's tough to see. I personally think they'll do just enough to get the last playoff spot. But again, I see them as kind of a one and done. Yep. If they're, and I really think that they are gonna sneak in. And that's just because I do think they have enough offensively. And George Petrovic is he's been unbelievable to watch. He's a great shot stop. I think if they can get enough cohesion out of the back moving forward, they'll be able to find a way to win some of these games. I hope, because my hope is they'll sneak into that last spot. And again, I'm not optimistic for the playoffs if we get in, but I do think they have enough, and I think it's almost kind of inexcusable if they don't make the playoffs, especially after the season they had last year.
Yeah, that 8th is the hope, 9th is the pessimist in me.
It's so funny how the tables have turned from last year. For reference, Taylor, I'm a Minnesota United fan. So last year we were the ones clinging on for playoffs. And now it seems Minnesota United, everything is going perfectly. And sorry to say, we did beat Everton 4-0 the other day, so that was nice.
That was miserable, especially. I mean, Everton. I really enjoyed the Revs talk. I'm not going to enjoy the Everton conversation.
We'll dive right in. Because, they lost 4-0 to Minnesota United. Hasn't been the best preseason. And like you said, you got into Everton supporting Tim Howard, kind of following that journey. How have the past couple of years been? Because you had to deal with Ancelotti. You had that window where you brought in, the three big midfielders, Alon and the likes of those guys, and then you had to deal with last year, battle and relegation. So how has it been as an Everton fan?
Well, and I'll tell you what, it feels like it's been about a decade since Silva was in charge of that team. And that was when I remember complaining about sacking him. And I'll tell you what, I would have taken him over what we had to deal with last year. He who shall not be named is what I like to say with him. But yeah, the Carlo Ancelotti era, I was so happy for him, as much as I hate Real Madrid, to see him get that, because the time that he was with Everton, he just got the best out of every player there. He clearly, you saw where we ended up. We were a top 10 team. We were vying for European playoffs, and he just got the best. DCL was unbelievable. Richarlison, everybody really. He even had Rodriguez playing great. And you saw what happened after that left. He just decided to go do Twitch every night and play video games. And do Twitch interviews more than get on the pitch. So it was, it's been a ride, because it felt like with Carlo we were going to be there, and we were going to be, this is the team we have, we're going to be competing, and then he kind of snaked us, and it was hard for a while, and now ever since then, it's just been an epic disaster. And you're right, the Minnesota game was really painful to watch, especially when you have the team that you had out there. And right now, I'm sure we'll get into it, just seeing Lampard go with this 3-man back right now, I don't know, with the personnel that he has, how he thinks that's going to work. I know you beat Blackpool here recently to get a win, but it's this formation that he's throwing out there has me just really, as you can tell, a little nervous about what Premier League teams are going to do to us, because if Blackpool and Minnesota United are having fun up the middle and tearing us apart, I don't see it going any smoother once we get to the Premier League season, especially opening up against Chelsea.
Yeah, it's a tough one to kind of call. You have bright spots with the likes of Anthony Gordon. I like some of the signings too. Tarkovsky's decent, and then you supposedly bringing in Cornet and Dwight McNeil. Also, I think Dwight McNeil's fantastic. So I think you can have room for improvement, but there's just, especially with Richarlison leaving, some gaping holes in that team.
Yep, and they have to find a way to use Dele Alli. I mean, I just feel like Lampard kind of doesn't know what to do with him right now, and I know that you can get a little bit out of him, so he's going to have to find a way big time to use Dele Alli, because I just think if you let him waste on the bench, to me, he can be of value if you put him in the right position.
Yeah. Do you, speaking of Frank, do you have any thoughts on Frank, either the appointment of him or how he's done so far, kind of where he can take this team?
I will say this. I think that what he did last year for us was incredible. I thought that team was dead in the water. That Burnley game, God, I mean, that was, it was a ride down the stretch for Everton this year. I've never experienced anything like it. I remember telling my brother it was my first ever relegation experience, and I never want to experience it again, and I think I'm going to this year. And I think it's a lot. Again, it's not to me because of Frank Lampard, unless he's going to, again, the three-man back for me has me really nervous. I thought last year, with the way he turned the team around, that he has the ability to coach in this league. I think that Everton, for him, is a great opportunity to show that what happened at Chelsea was a fluke and that he can be a really good time coach. And I personally think that this is a big test for him, but he needs to start making moves and get some personnel in there so he can play his style. Because I think right now, with what he's got in there, he's maybe going to bite off a little bit more than he can chew. He just needs some better personnel. I mean, because again, we saw what happened with Chelsea when he didn't have his personnel in there. It didn't go well, and I don't think it. Well, I should say this. Luckily for Chelsea, it's not going to be to the extreme it could be for Everton if things don't go his way again. So I think they need to find a way to get some more attacking, especially in the midfield for Frank, because I do like the appointment of him. I think there's potential there to be a really good coach, but to me, he has to get the right players to play the style that he's trying to. And so far at Chelsea, it didn't work for him because he didn't have the personnel. And right now at Everton, I don't think he has it either. And I think the team really needs to start looking into that and understanding that, you're going to be right back in the relegation battle if you don't start getting Frank Lampard some guys who can play the game that he's trying to play.
Yeah. It's kind of scary, too. If DCL went down, God forbid, I think Rondon would be your backup striker, wouldn't he?
Rondon, and he's and I know he's a professional athlete, and I hate saying guys like that, suck. But with all respect, he stinks. It's really hard to watch him on the pitch at that level, especially in the Premier League. I think he'd be a great player, maybe in a Serie A or something like that, a Bundesliga. But he clearly is just not cut out for the Premier League. Last year was pretty painful, and there was a couple games that came in as a sub and you were happy, but there was most of them that you were like, God, why is this who we have as depth? This is really it for us. This is what we're working with, man. It's been a tough go, and I do think Anthony Gordon's going to take a big step this year. I got a blue Everton jersey over there,
nice.
With his name on it from about 2 years ago. So I've been a big fan of him since he was in the U21 group, because he was tearing that league up.
Yeah.
And I think he'd start maybe kind of coming into his own this year in the Premier League, which could help them. But yeah, you're right. If DC goes down, DCL, I think that could be it, man. That could be the season for Everton. Seriously, it could be that easy for them. Just one guy like him going down.
Yeah, that's tough just to think about that. Yeah. Ooh.
It wouldn't be good.
Oh.
You got to think, you're talking about, what if even Decore goes down, or you know what I mean? That you don't have much depth on that team defensively. If Michael Keane, I don't even know if Seamus Coleman's going to be able to keep up with the style of play that Frank Lampard wants to play. I was reading the other day on a blog there that I read from Everton. They're talking about Coleman might not even start this year, and it's
crazy.
Geez, if this is the way that Frank Lampard's going to run this team, he needs to have guys that can do that. And I don't think, again, he has the personnel right now that can run the system he's trying to run.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you think Everton are going to kind of be in a relegation battle this year.
I do.
We can we'll close out the EPL with this then. So who do you think what's your top six? And who's getting relegated? And then give us a golden boot. Who's your early pick for golden boot?
in no order for the top 6 because I still haven't even done mine that we're doing on the show yet. We'll release them next week.
Fair. All right, fair.
So I will do no order because I don't even know what order I'm going in yet. But for a top 6, I mean, Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Tottenham, and honestly, that's right now where I think the top 4 could lie. I think Arsenal will push that too.
Yep.
Arsenal's at 5th spot, and this might, throw a little people off here with this one, but I do think that West Ham's going to be back in that battle and end up at 6, kind of in that, because I really, really love the team they've put together. I love Mikel Antonio. I love Sochek. Like they're like one of my sneaky favorite team in the Hammers. So I think the Hammers are going to surprise some people. And I think that 6th spot though is going to be a little bit. It's going to be competitive. It'll be very competitive. And I think the top 4 will be competitive as well too, because I think you can't, especially with how Arsenal's just gone out and gotten better, and so is Tottenham. Like what's going on right now in North London, you can't ignore. And I think even Chelsea could be the odd man out of those two. Especially if things don't go well for Tuchel early on.
It almost feels like an arms race in North London in this transfer window, just for how they're bolstering the work they've done is insane.
I was gonna say, what do you guys think for that top 6?
So I'm the resident Man City fan on the podcast. I think they're gonna run away with it this year. So I've got City winning it. I think Tottenham finished 2nd. And then I've got Liverpool in 3rd, Chelsea in 4th. That might have flipped from our day 1 predictions, but I think I've been convinced that Liverpool are going to finish 3rd, Arsenal 5th, and then it's Man United in 6th. But we've been kind of having the chat. We think that you're West Ham, like we think Newcastle is going to be that.
Ooh, good pick.
Josh and I are really riding on Newcastle. We like to look at them a lot.
That's a good dark horse, boys. I like that one.
I like West Ham too. West Ham just got that Scamacca guy from Italy yesterday, and I think he'll bolster their attack pretty nicely. But I have Liverpool, Man City, I have Spurs jumping up quite a bit, and then Chelsea as the top 4. I don't think Newcastle or West Ham will get top 6. I think they'll kind of get that 7th spot right outside, but it'll be a close race for sure. Any favorites for the Golden Boot, Taylor?
Yeah, real quick though, I thought it was interesting. None of us got Man U.
No chance.
Average. Glad that we're on the same page about how that season's gonna go for them.
They'll be like, no, they're gonna be so fine that 6th place, sure, they can just have it, I guess.
I don't even know. Man U, that's so funny that I was sitting there like, man, not much faith for Man U for many of us this year. I thought they had a really good shot last year, but man, I'm wondering what's going on. Golden Boot for me though, dude, and you're gonna love this since you're a City fan. Erling Haaland, I am a massive Erling Haaland guy, and I hate it so much that he went to Man City because I think I hate Man City more than I hate Liverpool, which is an Everton fan. That's saying. But so I'm sorry, my man. I can't. We have our show who's like a diehard City fan, and he rubs it in every time. But he was rooting for us, so respect to him in that sense that he was rooting for us to stay up. But yeah, I just think Erling Haaland's going to arrive this year. Like he is going to go to the Premier League, and he's going to show people that it doesn't matter that he was in the Bundesliga, and he's going to arrive officially, I think, to the world.
I said on our episode we've got coming out before this, so at time of release, it will have already been out. I think he's scoring 30. I think he is banging in goals this season.
Wow. 30, damn, okay.
You put him in a team with, you got De Bruyne behind him. He's already kind of forming a partnership with Grealish. He's got Phil Foden. You got Riyad Mahrez. There's way too much creativity for a player in the spots that like have been crying out for someone to just be there and put the ball in the back of the net. I think he's going to score loads of goals for us this year.
You just defied your own argument, Pat, by just listing a bunch of players that are all going to have like 5 to 7 goals. No chance he is.
He's scoring 30. I'm telling you, Josh, he is scoring 30.
Josh, you bring up a great point there. Like, as much as we might be high on Haaland, like he also might have some touches and goals taken away because of how good that team is.
That's what I'm thinking. The last player to score 30 in the Prem was Salah in 18-19 or 17-18. 30 is a lot in the league.
I was going to say 30. Like, I mean, I'm optimistic he scores a lot of goals, but yeah, 30 is hey, it could happen. And if anyone can do it right, it's Erlen Haaland. But I'm with you. It's a tall task.
Fun. He scores 26 and he's got 7 assists. How's that?
That's crazy. Before we get out of the EPL talk, have you made it over to Liverpool yet, Taylor?
I have not made it over to Liverpool. I have a good friend of mine who lives in the UK, though, and he makes sure to send me as many videos as he can of Anfield and not Goodison.
I love that. Got to make it over to Goodison before it's the Bramley Moore doc.
Right. I know. Well, that thing looks beautiful. You're a Liverpool fan, right, Zach?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah,
big Liverpool guy.
So I gotta be honest. So be honest with me. Were you rooting for us, or did you want us to go down?
I mean, I get the argument for going down. I do think I would miss Merseyside derbies a little bit.
That was my buddy who's a Liverpool fan over there too. He tells me, he said that straight up. He's like, man, as much as I hate you guys, I don't want to have a year without a Merseyside derby because then we can't kick your ass twice. And I'm like, whatever, dude.
I think as much as Liverpool fans and Everton fans hate each other, there is like a mutual respect and there's like a camaraderie about the city of Liverpool where they want the city of Liverpool to do well. So you don't want to see the other team go down to the championship. That's kind of tough.
No, for sure. And again, we have to come together against the common enemy, which is Man City at this point, and pretty soon to be Newcastle.
Of course. Pat, does that pretty much wrap up Premier League? Do you have any other questions?
The only other comment I have is you two talking about relegation and, don't want to see the other team get relegated. City relegated United back in like the 60s, and I wish I was alive to see that happen. That's how I feel about it.
That's great.
No remorse. Zero remorse, man. I love it. Well, hey, I'll tell you what. We're going to be in the relegation battle this year. I really do believe that. It's really sad, but we're bottom 6, and I'm very nervous. Like I said, I was all excited last year. Oh, we're not going to have to do this again. But, yeah, I think we're going to be doing this again.
Yeah. Well, I hope it works out for the best for you. I don't want to see you go down. I like to see the struggle. I don't want to see you go down. But
right, I was going to say, a Liverpool fan, you must really enjoy just watching our pain because it was tough, man. It was so bad. There were so many games too where I was like, at a bar or something like that, just so happy and this is going great, and just a lot of bad memories. Pain.
Some great moments of that Everton season. Just like watching the fans celebrating the goal in the last day and just running around the field. The guy zip tying his neck to the goalpost. There was a bunch of really highlight moments for Everton last season.
They did their best Eagles fan impression.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a goal for a fan like me. You never forget. Like that was ECL, man. That was incredible.
For sure. We'll dip out of the EPL talk. We have a few more questions for you here. So you do the football focus segment. You're a local soccer coach. You've been in kind of and around the Portland area pretty much your whole life. How have you saw the football soccer scene kind of grow, especially over the recent years?
It's a good question. I think it's really the level of play is much higher. There was definitely talent in 2011 through when I was there. But I think now more so than ever, I mean, just like we had 55 kids for summer soccer this summer. That's not including what we're going to get for tryouts. We're going to be looking at like 60, maybe 65 kids. When I was trying out, it was like 35, you know what I mean? So, I mean, you're talking about almost doubling the size. And unfortunately for Deering, they don't have the same numbers. But I know at Portland we do. I mean, we're obviously the inner city school. So I think it's a little bit easier for kids to be able to get to Portland, especially if they're living in the city. It's right there. The school is, and of course, Fitzpatrick's right down there. But I just think that the game itself, I mean, we're seeing kids being able to understand the pace of play better than when I was there. When I was there, there was a lot more kick and run, just very one-dimensional style of play. Now you're seeing a lot more, plays with free kicks we run plays out of our corner kicks, which is like unheard of, I think, 10 years ago for me. But we teach that with our kids. We have, there's certain plays you run structured. Oh, it's just, again, I think the technical side of things now is so much more dynamic, and also so much more I think there's more emphasis on it, in making sure that kids are understanding how to play the game the right way, not, understanding that it's, one touch game. And one interesting thing that, I can bring up, because today, after our last summer soccer session, Christo, who comes from Angola, he just moved here about 3 years ago. He's now going to be a junior. He came up to me and I was like, "Hey man, how'd summer soccer go this year for you?" You look like, just having our coaches talk with him. And he said, "Hey coach, I'm not going to lie." He goes, "You Americans can play. These kids can play." And I go, "Oh, why? What do they say over in Angola?" He's like, "Oh man, the feeling is that Americans aren't very good at soccer." But he goes, "No, these boys can play." And I think that's a real testament to just, the way that American soccer is viewed around the world, is that, we are still that kick and chase and one-dimensional style of play, when the reality is we're catching up and we can play on the world stage with a lot of people. And hearing, Kid himself, who just played in Angola, I mean, he said the athletes are a little bit better, but he said the technical and everything else is there. So I think that's a real testament to, one, Maine soccer, but also just where the United States is as well, and standing with the rest of the world and how we teach the game.
How much of that growth, that technical understanding, that just like kind of overall like know-how for the game, do you maybe attribute to the age we're living in and the time we're living in, the sport being so much more accessible from like a watching perspective of it, and like to grow an interest for it? Do you attribute, the fact that we're seeing, Peacock, NBC, ESPN even having streaming rights to soccer, you're not super legal like Reddit streams? It's so easy to watch the sport now and see it. Do you attribute that to the growth at all as well, and just like, on the side of people playing it too and just becoming better at it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my high school kids know more than me about the Premier League, the MLS, the Bundesliga. They know the leading scorer in Serie A last year. They could probably tell you who the leading assist guy is in La Liga right off the top of their head. You know what I mean? Yeah. They love the game, and they're able to ingest it more, because on television and on these, syndicated streaming platforms, you're able to get it. You have access to it. Like we were talking about earlier. It was so hard to find Tim Howard highlights when I was a kid growing up. But now you can literally just go on and watch the guy every night. You can get that. So I do totally think that growing the game is it's helping that we have it on these platforms. And I always have the argument with people who are much older than me. I'm only 30, but people who are a little bit older than me, because I always make the argument that soccer is going to be, at some point in the United States, probably the one, maybe not the number one, but the second most popular sport. And people like, I've been hearing that since the 80s. Okay, well, in the 80s and 90s, you didn't have Peacock like we just talked about. We didn't have Paramount Plus. You didn't have this access to all these leagues at an international scale like you do now. And I think you're absolutely right that there's so much merit that it impacts the kids. And just going to my kids that I deal with, I have a Crystal Palace fan on my team. Like, what? Like a kid, like, he comes around in a Conor Gallagher shirt. You know what I mean? He has a Benteke jersey. Like, you know what I mean? The kid is a massive Crystal Palace fan. Like, when would you ever hear of that if he didn't have access to Peacock, to watching these games? So I think you're right on it with the growth of the game, especially in America, having a lot to do with the fact that we've been able to access it more and more, especially just as recent as the past decade and really the past 5 years.
Yeah.
It's awesome to see it grow the way it is. I think kind of talking more just about like culture, soccer culture in general, in my mind, Portland in particular is like a huge soccer city. I lived there for like a year-ish, and, having multiple places that I could go on like Saturday or Sunday morning and watch the Premier League, it's been really, really cool for me. And then this new movement, the USL, the Portland popping up. How do you see Portland and Maine in general too, getting behind a professional team right here in Portland, just kind of thinking about the support that, say, like the Sea Dogs, the Celtics, the Mariners, the Red Sox, etc., kind of have, like that rabid Boston sports fan, New England sports fan, so to speak, getting behind a pro team up here in Maine?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would instantly happen just because the love of the game's there. And first of all, shout out to Gabe Hoffman Johnson, who's a really good friend of mine, who's just done such a fantastic job at spearheading this project, getting so many people involved with this. They do such a good job also with community things. I mean, especially with, I think it was like we had a group of new immigrants come to the city, and they gave out, free soccer balls, free just a whole event that welcomed these people to the community of Portland, which I think is so important to be doing in a time right now where it's hard to find people spreading a lot of love like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think what they do is great. And I'm not sure how far along they are, but I'll tell you what, if that gets brought to Portland, there's going to be tons of people that are for it. I know over at Portland High School, we personally would benefit from it because the new stadium that would be built would be on Fitzpatrick Stadium. So we'd be able to be playing in professional facilities. And I just think that if you were able to tell, me in 2007, like, hey man, like someday there might be a, soccer stadium at Fitzpatrick Stadium and kids are going to have a chance to play on it, I'd tell you you're crazy.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's coming to light is so awesome. And I just think there is an absolute hotbed for it. And as you mentioned, the city already embraced it. It's a mixing pot of cultures here. And soccer is one of the things that brings all these cultures together for the better, for one purpose, and that's to cheer for a team, cheer for whatever, and have fun. And as you mentioned, go to the Portland Zoo, go to Rira's, whatever it is, and just embrace the culture and the love that's found, especially around Portland, around this sport. So I think it would be totally embraced in a big way, like in a really big way. I mean, just seeing the turnout, seeing how many people that I work with just on a daily basis around the sport in the community. I mean, it would be completely received so well. And again, over at Portland, we'll take a new stadium, man.
I think that helps the coverage of the sport, growing the sport, as well as having so many professional teams in niche areas like Des Moines, Omaha, Vermont, like all these smaller, more rural areas are getting teams as well in the USL, USL1. I think that's really helping a lot of people who might not be into soccer, in the city scene as much, get into the sport as well, which is quite nice.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen Madison, Wisconsin, the team they have for USL, man?
Yeah, Forward Madison's great. I love them.
It's crazy. It's incredible. So you're right, Zach. I mean, there is 100% like it's kind of like if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
If you give people a soccer team, if you show them how exciting the game can be. And also when we're talking about, I mean, look what Sacramento's doing right now in the MLS. Like, is it the Open Cup they have?
Yep.
I mean, you have a U.S. team right now that's playing Kansas City for a chance to go to win a trophy. Like, that idea alone, and I know Sacramento was kind of one of the teams in the MLS that was considered for the expansion, and then COVID happened and all that, but the reality is it's that if you bring a USL team, you're telling people in the community, like, you can build a team that has a chance to do that.
Yep.
Like, you can be a part of that. Like, you see that on TV. Like, you could be going to a game in Portland someday that's literally being on ESPN broadcasted because you're playing, like, the Revs or something for a chance to go this cup of whatever. I mean, it's just there's so much endless possibilities. And I think once people understand what the sport can bring and how much excitement it brings, it's a no-brainer. It's going to take right off. Completely agree.
Yeah, I really, 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 the day it happens will be the best day of my life. I will be so excited. It's an hour away from where I live.
I think we're all very excited for it.
We'll have to get, next time Gabe hits me up getting some stuff together, we'll make sure we get you boys some apparel. You guys already got some?
Yeah.
Forest City.
I missed out on the last drop.
Oh man, the Forest City gear, man. We got to get you some.
It's so good. It's so good.
I got the scarf
awesome.
right behind me. I just got the crew neck a couple weeks ago, so.
Yeah, I got the scarf too. Yeah, the crew neck, man. The crew neck's comfortable.
I like it a lot.
Yeah,
I have one final question for you. It's kind of a fun one here. So the USL to Portland, the first kit drops, and you have to choose a Maine brand to go on the front of it. Who are you choosing?
I'm not going to be that guy who says the LL Bean one, even though I don't know if you guys saw those ones. Those were fire. That green, wow, that green was so good looking. Oh, man, if I had to throw any brand on it from Maine, can I get two choices?
Go ahead.
Give me Martin's. I want Martin's on the front of it, or I want the B&M Bean Factory, like the B&M across it. Either those two. I'd be cool with that. Or I don't know if you guys are familiar with Governors up there in Northern Maine a little bit. Give me some Governors. Either of those three, I'm cool with it. But Martin's is my number one choice. Should have bought it when I saw it, bro.
That's I'm thinking on the topic of Martin's, I think an equally dope Maine brand shirt sponsor would be Rennie's.
Rennie's. Yep, absolutely right. So you got to get like the OG Maine brand in there, the Martins, the Rennie's.
You could get like a Maine adventure on like the back of the collar, like in little text. Oh my god, it'd be so crazy. Designing right now.
Yeah, nah, like that's you gotta go like with this the OG Maine. Like I wouldn't. No offense to Sebago Brewing Company and them, I would want one of those. Give me like the dollar stores, like you said. Give me the Martins, man, the authentic Maine.
I love that.
Sebago will be on the sleeve. We'll give Sebago a sleeve sponsor.
Yeah, right. For real.
That was a good time. I know me and Pat both enjoyed our conversation here, Taylor. Why don't you just let our fans know where they can find your stuff, where they can listen to you, and then we'll head out here.
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, anybody who's a Revs fan, definitely go check out the Tommy McNamara interview. He was fantastic. Gives us a lot of insight on Brandon Bye and a couple of those guys that have come over offensively. And, of course, just the insight on Bruce Arena. That's on all of our audio that we post to from that. It's on thebigjab.com. Or you can just go on my Twitter, which is at Taylor Mannix 103. And, of course, Instagram is at Manny Mikes or at the Mannix Brothers, where you can find a lot of that stuff. But, yeah, definitely would suggest any soccer fans out there, check that Tommy McNamara interview out. And we actually have a few more Revs players coming down the lineup, too, a little sneak peek. I can't tell you who it is yet, but a few more players will be coming on the show here over the next month, so you guys can get a little insight of what the Revs are doing and some of those players. And we're thankful. Shout out the Revs for trusting us with that too. They're fantastic people.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you again, Taylor. Really appreciate your time tonight. All of his socials and everything like that, we'll plug it right down in the description, either in the YouTube video, in the Spotify link, or the show notes on wherever this episode goes to. So you guys can just check.
You guys are awesome, man. Keep doing what you're doing. You do a great job, and love talking soccer. Anytime you guys want to have me to come on chit chat Everton, especially when we get relegated next year potentially, just holler at me, man. On and I might have a beer while I do it, and you guys might have to take breaks while I wipe my tears, but we can do it anytime.
That's the perfect ending to this episode. We'll catch you guys on the back half.
See you guys.